Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be a little bit different from my usual videos. I mentioned in the last one that the next video would be a video on Mary Shelley's The Last Man, but I recorded that, last weekend. Wasn't that pleased with the result. So before I re-record that one, I decided to do this video, which is a little bit lighter, a little bit funner, and it's going to be on the Mount TBR 2021 challenge on Goodreads. So this is an annual challenge called Mount TBR, and then whatever the year happens to be. And what I'm going to do with this video is, instead of posting my list as a thread in the group challenge, I'm just going to make this video with the 12 books that I'm going to read, and then maybe do like 1 or 2 updates throughout the year just to give an idea of how that's going for me. So some of you might have already participated in the Mount TBR challenge, but basically the challenge lets you create your own thread where you just list the books and then you kind of cross them out as you get to them. I always like to kind of pre-list them. Some people will just kind of play it by ear kind of thing, but the main rule is that the books that you have on your list, or the books that you read as a part of the challenge, are all ones that you purchased in the year before. So they can't have been purchased in 2021. At the very least, they have to have been purchased in 2020. But there's basically different levels that you can choose from. So the first one, I think, is base level Mount Witchproof, and that requires you to read a minimum of 6 books in the year that meet the criteria of the challenge. And then the one after that is Pikes Peak, and it asks you to try to read 12 books that meet the criteria. I usually choose Pikes Peak just because this challenge for me is not really meant to be like difficult, I guess. It's just a way for me to go through books that I've had hanging around for a while and that for some reason I haven't got to. So a lot of times these books are I've purchased them like over a year previous, and then for some reason I didn't read them or whatever, although some of them I did purchase in this case in 2020. But yeah, it's just to kind of remind myself to read those books. Anyway, so there's a bunch of different levels that you can choose from, or you can even, like, if you meet the challenge before the end of the year, you can upgrade to a different level. So if you finish Pikes Peak, you can move up 1 or 2 levels, whatever you think is most realistic for you. The highest one is Mount Olympus, with the goal being to read at least 150 books that meet the criteria. So that's for people that tend to buy a lot of books that they don't read. For me, I find the challenges a little bit different. I don't tend to buy a ton of books that I don't end up reading within a year. Anyways, so I'm doing Pikes Peak again this year, and these are the books that I have lined up for this year. So the first one on my list is going to be the Orkneyinga Saga, and this is, of course, an Icelandic saga. I actually got this as a gift maybe two or so Christmases ago, and I kept meaning to read it, and I do enjoy Norse and Icelandic sagas, but I never got around to it, so I'd really like to actually read it this year. So number 1 on the list is Orkneyinga Saga, and that was a great gift, but again, for whatever reason, never got to it. So book number 2 on my list is going to be Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski, and that is one of the Witcher books. So as far as the Witcher series chronology, this book I believe takes place in between The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny. But it is actually the most recent Witcher book published, although I thought I heard that there might be a new one, or he's writing a new one, or a new one is going to be published. I can't remember. But yeah, otherwise this is the most recently published and the most recently translated in English, but it takes place in the early days of the Witcher series. This is one that I bought also a couple of years ago, and I kept wanting to reread The Last Wish before I got to it, and just never did, so I need that to be this year, and I plan to actually read this in the spring of the year, so not too long from now. Book number 3 on my Mount TBR Pikes Peak list is called Reeve the Just and Other Stories by Stephen Donaldson, and this is obviously a short story anthology or compilation by Stephen Donaldson, who you might know from the Thomas Covenant books. I bought this like maybe 3 years ago at a local YMCA book sale, and I was really into reading it at the time, but again, I just never got to it. I again need this year to be the year that I finally read this, because I really don't like having a ton of books that I've purchased years before unread. Like I said, I like to read them close to the time, within a year of buying them, and that hasn't been the case with Reeve the Just. So need to get to it this year. Might be towards the end of the year, but either way, maybe it'll be one of my 1 or 2 short story books for the year. The next book I have on my list, I think book number 4, is Dissolution by C.J. Sansom. And this is the first book of a historical fiction / mystery series. I got this also at a book sale, not at the YMCA, but at a local college, and I think I paid like somewhere between $2 or $4 for it, so not a ton. But this is the year that I want to actually read this, not only this book, but the series itself, because it does sound like a series that's both historical fiction and as a mystery, something very much up my alley. So really need to get to this series this year. And I'm hoping to do that earlier in the year. We'll see how, because I am reading a little bit slower than normal this year, but hopefully I can at least start the series in the spring. The 5th book on my list is actually one that I'm currently reading and almost finished, as you can see, and that is Cold Earth by Anne Cleeves. And this is book 7, I believe, of her Shetland Island mystery series. And you actually might know that from Netflix, where Shetland is these books have been turned into a BBC TV series. Yeah, so this will be the first one ticked off my list. If you like kind of more atmospheric mysteries, I definitely highly recommend this series. It's good for kind of that brooding kind of mood, and kind of a more desolate, I guess you can say, landscape, since it takes place on Shetland Island. Book 6 on my list is another mystery, and this time a Golden Age mystery, and it's Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers. And this is the first Lord Peter Wimsey mystery, which I really wanted to get into last year. Didn't get a chance, so want to do that this year. So yeah, can't say much about it so far. I first heard about these actually in this book, To Say Nothing of the Dog by Connie Willis, which is a really fun Victorian / modern time travel novel. It's a lot of good humor, especially if you do enjoy Victorian settings or Victorian novels. This one was not written in Victorian times, but again, part of the setting is set there. But yeah, it's one of the first places that I heard, actually I wouldn't say the first place, but one of the first places I heard about these these mysteries, so I wanted to check them out, as I'm a big fan of British mysteries and that kind of things. Book number 7. I actually don't remember where I bought this, but it has been on my to-read list for a long time, never got around to it. It's definitely been a few years since I bought it, and this is actually, I think, the only non-fiction book on my list, and it is called Unsettling Canada, A National Wake-Up Call, and it's written by Arthur Manuel, who is a very significant and influential Indigenous activist here. He has since passed away, but his daughter actually is also an amazing activist. You might have heard of her, Kanahus Manuel, who you might know from the Tiny House Warriors out west. But yeah, so like I said, it's been a long time coming for me to read this book, and I really need to get to it this year. I also don't tend to read a ton of nonfiction, so I hope this will be one of my nonfiction reads this year, and one that I expect to be very, very educational, informative, enlightening. But yeah. So the next book on my list is called Radicalized by Cory Doctorow, and this is a book that my partner, I think, read last year, really enjoyed it and recommended it, so I hope to read it this year. So it's a collection of 4 novellas by Cory Doctorow, and they're all dystopias from what I understand, and they deal a lot with corporations, and I guess it's kind of corporate dystopias. For example, it's got the name of the 4 novellas are Unauthorized Bread, so I think this is dealing with like smart kitchen appliances and things going awry around that. They've got Model Minority, Radicalized, and The Mask of the Red Death. So we'll see how those go. But yeah, I'm excited to read it. Yeah, so that's Radicalized by Cory Doctorow. Which will be one of my sci-fi reads. I definitely tend to read more fantasy than sci-fi, so this will be one of my sci-fi reads for this year. The next book is by an author who I've really come to like in recent years, and that my appreciation for her started with one of my all-time favorite series called the Trickster series. The first book you might know is Son of a Trickster, and this is Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson. So this one, I really love Eden Robinson's sense of humor. I might have mentioned that in past videos. So I've been wanting to read this book for a while. We bought it, I think, 2 years ago or so. Neither of us has got the chance to read it yet, but I need to do that this year, maybe after I read the third Trickster book, which is coming out. Well, I think it's actually already released, and we have to go pick up our pre-order for it. We don't usually pre-order things, but did for the last Trickster book, so yeah, maybe after that I'll read this one too. The next book on my list is actually 2 books, but I didn't... Oh, my cat sees pigeons. So the next book on my list is actually 2 books because I didn't want to have 2 books in a series taking up multiple spots. But basically I've had the books 2 and 3 of Ravenor for a while. I found these maybe 3 years ago in my laundry room, my building laundry room, and for free, kind of free for the taking. People were just trying to get rid of stuff. So I grabbed those, and I had been looking for this edition's first book for a while, wasn't able to find it, so last year I grabbed the first book in the series in a different edition. So I have to read this year for sure, because it's been a long time coming with me trying to find the first book. And I should mention that this Ravenor series is part of the Warhammer 40k series, and I do have a love for Warhammer books, that's for sure. Especially Horus Heresy. These are not obviously Horus Heresy, but even so. Sorry, my cat is interrupting. Even so, yes, Ravenor. On to the next, because I've lost my train of thought because of pigeon drama with my cat. Anyways, so the second last book on my list is The Naked Sun by Isaac Asimov, and I read the first of his robot mysteries, Caves of Steel, maybe 2 years ago, and then I have since been wanting... Okay. I don't know what he's doing. Do you want to come? What's... Okay. And I have been since wanting to read the second book of the robot detective series, Naked Sun. As I mentioned, the first one of these is called Caves of Steel, which was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Not as good as iRobot for me. I really loved the iRobot stories, but it was still good. But this one I think I've been putting off because when I bought it, somehow I didn't notice this situation in the back. So yeah, the last 13 pages don't have a corner missing. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I can kind of decipher what the words generally should have been in those sections. We'll see. It just looks like somebody took a chomp out of that. I don't know if it was cat interference maybe, but yeah, hopefully I can read it this year and understand the conclusion. So yeah, The Naked Sun, Isaac Asimov. The 12th and final book on my list for this year is actually some Arthurian stuff. So this is Lancelot ou le Chevalier de la Charrette by Chrétien de Troyes. Yeah, this is actually, the French translation of this is Lancelot or the Knight of the Cart. I have never read it before, although I am a big fan of Arthurian stuff. This is actually a book I got from my mother when she had to get rid of some of her books a few years back, and so I salvaged this one as well as a couple more from her. I'll just get a bit of a close-up there, but yeah. So I'm excited to read it, and I hope to read it soon, since I didn't do that when I actually got my hands on it. For some reason, I would have thought that I would have read this as a teen too, since I was definitely very into that stuff back then in my teens and 20s, but for whatever reason, never read this one, and hopefully soon, sometime this year. Anyways, that's it for my 12 books as part of the Mount TBR 2021 challenge, Pikes Peak. I often don't get to like the full 12. Usually I'll hit like 10 or something like that, and there'll be a couple left over. I'm trying to remember which ones actually are left over. I think Season of Storms might actually be left over from last year's challenge, as well as actually Unsettling Canada 2 has been on my challenge before. And yeah, I just haven't got to those, so this year needs to be the year. Anyways, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.